Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again tonight with another recap of the NBA games from today. I said in the last game recap I did that I kind of wanted to come up with a name for this series where I recap the games, talk about storylines, and talk about the teams that played each day. But the problem was I didn't really have any great ideas, so I asked you guys for your help in the comments below, and I talked a little bit with my brother at NinjaBands on Twitter. I'll link his Twitter down in the description below. Go follow him. He's awesome. And ultimately, him and I came up with a name that I think is going to probably be the name for the series for the foreseeable future, and that name is After the Buzzer. So I'm probably going to start these videos from now on with what's up, guys? Welcome to After the Buzzer, and we're going to get straight into the game recaps. I think that's a lot catchier than saying each time I do one of these videos a recap of the NBA games from today. I think it's just kind of a mouthful, and ultimately I think it's better for this channel and the growth of this series, this channel in general, if I name this series, because this is what I do most on my channel. The thing that I do by far the most is recapping games because they're topical issues, and I think it just adds a little bit to it. So from now on, the name of the series is After the Buzzer. Let me know what you think of that name in the description, or not the description, the comments below. You can't get in the description. And with that, we're just going to go ahead and jump into it. But just for future reference, if you hear me say that, don't be surprised, because that's what I'm going to call it from here on out. So there were a ton of great games today and a lot of storylines that you could really talk about. There are many different teams and narratives that I wanted to mention in the title and thumbnail of this video. We could talk about the Charlotte Hornets, a team that I've really wanted to talk about, and I really want to make a video about them. The Brooklyn Nets, another team that is probably the title favorite right now, who had a great showing today against Phoenix. We could talk about the Atlanta Hawks, who are rolling, beating the Bucks without Trae Young. The Kings, the Warriors, so many different teams I could talk about today. The Wizards, who are on a crazy 8-game win streak, trying to make the playoffs. But ultimately, I think the team that I want to talk about most in this video is the Memphis Grizzlies. They're the title of this video. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but the Memphis Grizzlies are a team that I have not talked about enough. I've not done a good enough job about covering the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm going to be the first one to tell you that. You don't need to tell me in the comment section below. I can tell you that because look, I decided to look up real quick before I made this video and see if I had ever named a title of like talking about something with the Memphis Grizzlies, if I had ever really used the Grizzlies in like a thumbnail, and I don't think I have. Maybe I just couldn't find the video, or I just don't remember it, but I don't think I've ever talked about the Grizzlies as the main topic of a video, and that is a crime, because this team's been really good. If the season ended today, they're in the play-in tournament, and they're rolling right now with the ability to possibly jump up to that 6th seed, which would be incredible for this young Grizzlies team, a team that has been without their second best, potentially best at times player in Jaren Jackson Jr. A fantastic player. He's like a unicorn type guy, blocks shots. It looks like he's grown a couple inches too. He looks like he's like a 7-footer at this point. He's going to hit shots, he's going to block shots, great on both sides of the ball, and he really opens up the game for the rest of this Grizzlies team. And he didn't even play today in a 7-point win over the Portland Trailblazers. There was a stat today that they said in the broadcast that the Memphis Grizzlies and Trailblazers have switched which team won and lost like the past, like, I think it was like 8 times that these teams have played, and the Grizzlies today beat them for the 2nd time in a row. The Trailblazers had everyone tonight. This was a pretty much fully healthy, or as healthy as we've seen them, Trailblazers team. And the Grizzlies, without Jaren Jackson Jr., who isn't going to play too much. I think he's continuing to be on a minutes limit, and he's not going to play like back-to-backs and stuff like that, so he's limited. Ultimately didn't play today, and it didn't matter. The Grizzlies just beat up on the Blazers, and this was a great clutch time showing from them specifically. They just killed the Blazers in clutch time. They made them pay for all their mistakes. They had some great plays. Ja Morant had an incredible steal on a Norman Powell inbound pass, who, credit to Norman Powell, had an incredible end of the game. He was really the guy who was leading the comeback charge for the Blazers at the end. But Ja Morant gets this clutch steal on a Norman Powell inbounds pass to help ice the game. Ja's been stepping up like crazy recently. At the start of the season, Ja Morant was perceived, okay, he could be an all-star this season. And I think he did have that potential, but I think a lot of his game was hindered by missing his partner. It's not like understood enough in the NBA how impactful having another guy next to you is. I know we talk a lot about how guys need help and stuff like that, but Ja Morant's game is a lot of Russell Westbrook type stuff, where he can get into the paint, he can get by pretty much everyone, but sometimes he's looking to kick out, and missing a 7-foot 3-point sniper in Jaren Jackson Jr. is really hindering his ability to do that. That's a huge part of his game, and the floor just isn't spaced enough for him, and his 3-point ball has really not been what it should be this season. Recently, even before Jaren Jackson Jr. came back, but in the games that Jaren Jackson Jr. has played as well, his game feels much more fluid. It feels like the game is opening up for him. He's been way better from the 3-point line. He had this move tonight where he broke, I forget who it was that he made fall over. He made someone, I think it was Nasir Little. He made Nasir Little fall over and then did a ball fake to the side to send Norman Powell running over to another guy to leave himself wide open for 3, and he drilled it. I felt like Ja in the beginning of the season would have not made that 3 or not shot it with so much confidence. It feels like he's kind of finding his stride, and I don't know what that is. Maybe he's just feeling more confident at the moment, that his play is improving and therefore he's raising a confidence level. But ultimately, whatever the reason, Ja is on fire, and Ja is playing like a lot of people expected him to play this season. And it was going to come along eventually. Ja's way too talented to be struggling the way he was for the majority of this season. He's way too talented for that. And now he is stepping up big time, and this Grizzlies team is rolling because of it. He's been their leader the last few games this season. He dealt with an injury earlier in the year too, which kind of threw him out of rhythm. But I think Ja's here to stay. I think that slumping is done. I think the 3-point ball is going to come along. And this Grizzlies team is dangerous. I don't want to play this Grizzlies team in the first round if I'm any team in that Western Conference. Even if they don't beat you, they are a team that isn't quite grit and grind like the old Grizzlies team, but they have that mentality of we're going to grind out games and we're going to be physical and we're going to make you earn every win. That's what the Grizzlies are doing as of recently. They've had some problems in clutch time before, but right now it feels like they're at the peak of their powers. Triple J is back. Jonas Valanciunas has been their best player for a lot of this season, the way he's been playing. Ja's finally finding his stride. Kyle Anderson is probably the most underrated role player in the entire NBA. He's been so good, and I think it's because he plays like he's in slow motion, like someone has him in half speed the whole time. Maybe that's why he isn't recognized as much, but he's been so good for them. D'Anthony Melton, steals in the draft like Xavier Tillman, Desmond Bane, guys like that. Grayson Allen has been playing really well for them. Did I already mention D'Anthony Melton? I really like D'Anthony Melton's game. He was a great pickup for this Grizzlies team. But ultimately, the Grizzlies are hitting their stride at the perfect time. Right now, there's a lot of teams that are falling and some teams that are really hot. It feels like most teams are either super hot or really cold right now. It doesn't feel like there's many teams that are like, oh, win here, loss, loss, win, loss. Like, they're not alternating. The Wizards, I talked about earlier, on an 8-game win streak. I'll talk about them in a second. The Grizzlies are finding the stride. This is the way they need to keep going. They need to keep rolling, because if they're able to get up to that 6 seed, that's massive and avoid the play-in tournament. And that's huge for your development down the line too. As a Thunder fan, last season, we made the playoffs in a season where no one expected us to, or a lot of people slept on us making the playoffs. And that, I think that did wonders for our player development, because the guys got more confident, and that playoff experience really does come in handy down the line, even if it doesn't translate into a series win this year for the Grizzlies, which I don't think it will end up doing so, because in that first round, they're probably gonna have to play the Clippers or the Suns, which are really tough matchups. Although, like I said, the Grizzlies are gonna give whatever team they face in the first round hell, and I think they will make the playoffs. I think that's ultimately the way this Grizzlies team is gonna go, the way they've been impressing me. Shout out to the Grizzlies. I have been slacking. I pride myself on talking about pretty much every team on this channel, or I try to talk about pretty much every single team. But the Grizzlies are a good team that I have not talked about enough. I apologize to Grizzlies fans. I hope this makes up for it. I'm rooting for y'all to make the playoffs. I really want to see Ja play in the playoffs. I want to see more of Triple J to end the season. I think this is a good time for him to come back. Not too much time where he's going to risk re-injury, but enough time for him to get back into the rhythm and find his footing before heading into the playoffs. And like I said, I think they're a really tough out. Shout out to the Grizzlies. On the other side of this game for the Portland Trailblazers, I don't know what the future holds for the Trailblazers. I tweeted this out earlier, and I've been talking about it with a couple of my friends. The Trailblazers feel like they're stuck. This feels like the end of this current iteration of the Portland Trailblazers. Whether that means getting rid of Terry Stotts, which I think does happen in the offseason, getting rid of CJ McCollum, which is a trade I could definitely see. This Blazers team doesn't have a lot of room to move up. It feels like they're capped out, because ultimately, if you're trading CJ McCollum, you could throw in a bunch of first-round picks to try and make a deal, but you don't have any really great young assets at this point, or at least none that are established. You have guys with potential, like a Nasir Little I could talk about, maybe a Derek Jones Jr. But your best young asset was Gary Trent, and you dealt him for Norman Powell, who has been great for the Trailblazers, but ultimately, if you're trying to make moves to improve your team, if you were able to package like a Gary Trent Jr. and a CJ with maybe a pick or two, that could have gotten you a great return for another star to put next to Damian Lillard. Ultimately, I think the Trailblazers are just kind of stuck right now. I don't know what direction they're going to go. They have so much money tied up in so many different guys. I don't know. I don't know what the Blazers do from here, but they're one of the teams that I just mentioned. The Grizzlies are kind of on a roll. The Wizards are on a roll. The Blazers are falling. They are struggling really, really badly right now, and something's got to give. And I don't know what it is. Dame is kind of struggling right now, and I don't blame the guy because you can only have so many dominant performances in a row. It's very rare for a player to spend the whole season being as dominant as Damian Lillard was throughout pretty much this whole season. At some point, you're going to have a slump or you're going to struggle for a little bit, and it's coming at probably the worst time where teams like the Warriors, who are down there below you, are now surging, and I think they're only like 1.5 games back now of potentially passing the Portland Trailblazers. And if the Blazers miss the playoffs, this is a insanely disappointing season. Like, I can't overstate how disappointing it would be for the Portland Trailblazers to miss the playoffs. And if they miss the playoffs, Terry Stotts is gone, I think CJ is gone, and moves are going to be made. I think the only guy safe is Dame if they miss the playoffs. That might be a little extreme. I'm not sure if they will deal everyone like that, but something's got to give. Something's got to change for the Blazers. It's just been too long trying the same thing over and over again. I think something's got to give. Outside of that game, I know I talked a lot about that one. I'm going to try and get to some of the other stuff, maybe in lesser detail, but Celtics Hornets. The Celtics, not a good game from them. They missed Robert Williams really badly, and the Hornets made them pay pretty much every time they made a bad play. Tatum, not a great game from him. He just struggled, and ultimately the Hornets are nice. The Hornets are really, really good. I love watching the Charlotte Hornets play. If I had to list right now, probably like my top 3 teams to watch outside of the Thunder, because obviously I'm always watching the Thunder, the Hornets are in that top 3. 100%. Like, I don't even need to look at the teams. The Hornets are up there. They're just like, I love watching young teams that are continuing to soar. And I think the Hornets might have the most underrated young core in the entire NBA. I want to make a video about the Hornets so badly. And I'm going to, probably as soon as LaMelo Ball comes back and plays for a little bit, I want to make a video covering the Hornets young core, because that team is stacked in terms of young talent. My roommate, who I know I talk about all the time in these videos, but this was the Celtics game. So, and as a Celtics fan, he was watching this game out in the living room, and we were sitting there talking about the Hornets young core, and he said, the Hornets are in trouble. And I was like, why? And he said, because they have so much talent at all these different positions. And he's right. When like a Gordon Hayward and Cody Zeller come back, you've got so many like log gyms. Like, you have Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham as your point guards. You have Malik Monk as a wing. You have Miles Bridges as a wing. You have LaMelo Ball as a wing. You have PJ Washington at like the 4 spot. Gordon Hayward as a wing. PJ Washington's been playing a lot of small ball center for them. Do you put him back on the bench, or do you put him in that 4 spot and move Miles Bridges to the bench when Gordon Hayward, Cody Zeller, guys like that come back? What do you do? And I think that's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see the way the Hornets kind of move forward with things, because all these guys are excelling right now. They are thriving in their current roles. I think ultimately you have to let the young guys play. I think an ideal lineup when things go back to normal, when they're all healthy, is Rozier, LaMelo Ball, Gordon Hayward, Miles Bridges at that 4 spot, and PJ Washington at the 5. And that's a super nice team. The Hornets are another team that if I'm a team towards the top of the standings, I don't want to face the Hornets round 1, because they're explosive and they could just jump on you from the get-go. And if they hit you hard, it could be 2 minutes into the game, and next thing you know, you're down 15 to the Hornets. Miles Bridges has thrown down 2 alley-oop dunks. LaMelo Ball drove to 3, and Terry Rozier has 6 assists already, like he had today. In the first quarter, he had 6 or 7. The Hornets just jump on you, and that's what they did to the Celtics today. They drilled 3 after 3 after 3, and they couldn't miss, and it just was too much for the Celtics. They just got overwhelmed so early, and they were never able to climb back from it. The Hornets are a scary team. They have a super underrated future, and I'm really excited for Hornets fans. I'm excited for the team, and I really want a Buzz City jersey. Those are some of the best jerseys in the entire NBA. Next, Suns-Nets. The Nets are going to be really tough to beat. This is a really good Suns team. The Nets did not have James Harden tonight, and they made them look like chumps for a lot of the game. A really good Suns team. The game really at the end was not as close as the score suggests. It was like a 15-point game going into like the last couple minutes. Chris Paul made a couple big plays. He might have dropped Blake Griffin. He dropped Blake Griffin. It kind of looked like Blake flopped, but I'm going to go with the fact that it was a crossover because that's way more fun. And the Nets just made, like, the way I was talking about the Hornets previously, where they just make you pay for everything, that's what the Nets do. Kevin Durant came off the bench today and had like 30 points in like 28 minutes. Coming off injury, this is like his second game back from injury. Kevin Durant gets injured, it's like nothing happens. He's like the Terminator. Kevin Durant gets hurt, and it's like, oh, I guess I have to sit because it's like league protocols, and if I don't sit, they'll realize I'm a cyborg. Injuries just don't seem to affect him. He had one of the most debilitating injuries in sports a couple seasons ago in that final series, and he came back like it was nothing this year. This year, he's playing like the Durant we've seen for so long. And that's an incredible feat. And I think part of that is just because of how talented he is. He doesn't rely a lot on athleticism. He's just this 7-foot freak that can shoot over literally anyone from any point on the court. I tweeted out earlier that Kevin Durant has to be in the top 5 players all time that make the game just look easy. He makes basketball, professional NBA basketball, look easy as hell because that's just how good he is. I know I'm a Thunder fan, so it's weird to probably hear me talk about Kevin Durant in a positive light, but he's just really good. And tonight, he dominated the Suns. Kyrie Irving had an incredible game as well. Super efficient, 30 bomb. Kyrie's great. Kyrie has become one of my favorite players in the league as of recently. Just the way he kind of he gets on the court, he gets things done and just kind of chills. He is another player who makes the game look incredibly easy. Same with James Harden. The Nets can dominate and blow you out with the littlest effort possible, which is very scary for the rest of the league. And I don't know how teams are going to beat this Nets team in a 7-game series when it comes to the playoffs. Probably the only hope they have is the fact that it seems like James Harden isn't going to play the rest of the regular season, meaning that going into the playoffs, the big three will only have played 7 games together, all together, which is not a lot at all. In a 72-game season, that's not what you want to see. But ultimately, I think they're talented enough to get past that, and they're going to be really, really tough out. I don't know how you make it happen. I'll see if any teams are able to. I think the last 2 games I'm going to talk about are Cavs Wizards and Bucks Hawks. I'm not going to talk about Pacers Magic because that was a blowout. And Kings Warriors, yeah, I don't think I want to talk about that much either because I've talked a lot about both of those teams recently. Cavaliers Warriors, or Cavaliers Wizards, excuse me. The Wizards are peaking at the perfect time. And Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, both playing incredible basketball right now. Russ, I think, is kind of the thing that has really turned up. He started the season really injured, and that led to a lot of losses, putting them in a hole. But now that Russ is healthy and he's playing like he has been playing for the longest time, for his entire career pretty much, dropping triple-doubles. The other night, he had a 30-point triple-double against the Thunder, which was great to see. And tonight, he kept doing that. He's just super impactful. Him and Bradley Beal are a really good duo, and they destroyed the Cavs tonight. The Cavs are struggling hard, but I want to give credit to Sexton. Specifically, I want to talk about Darius Garland. He's a guy that doesn't get enough credit. If the Most Improved Player award could go to second-year players, which technically it can go to second-year players, but they never give it to a second-year player, Darius Garland would definitely be in the conversation. He went from a guy that a lot of people considered the worst player in the league last season to a really, really productive player. It's going to be interesting to see the way the Cavs go in the draft because I don't know. They just have a lot of question marks at certain positions. Like Jarrett Allen seems to be their center. They have a point guard and a shooting guard that they like a lot in Colin Sexton and Darius Garland. But ultimately, if you jump and you get to the opportunity to take a really good guard, like imagine the Cavs get the 1st or 2nd pick and they have a chance to take Cade Cunningham or like a Jalen Suggs or something like that. What do the Cavs do? Because they have Garland and Sexton who they really like. But if you get a player like that, like a potential generational talent, you have to go with talent over fit. I think the Cavs are going to be one of the most interesting teams to look at going into this draft in this offseason because Sexton and Garland are both playing really well. Same with Jarrett Allen. You have some established pieces, but they're not good. And so you have to evaluate at what draft pick do you make, what moves do you make to further bolster this young core. And I think right now they have a solid base. It just depends how they keep building. Bucks Hawks, last game I'm going to talk about. The Hawks beat the Bucks without Trae Young by 7 points. The Milwaukee Bucks, healthy. No problems for this roster. And the Hawks just beat them up, especially at the end of the game. But Bogdan Bogdanovic, I believe it was a 29-point game. Kevin Huerter had a 20-point game. They're just good. This Hawks team is just good. And they're gelling way quicker than I thought they were going to. I thought this Hawks team might miss the playoffs this season. Ultimately, they made me look like an idiot. And I think Nate McMillan deserves Coach of the Year praise. The way that he has this team ready to play. He switched his game plan. Something that the Hawks did not do a lot of this season with a lot of the injuries was they never switched their game plan. When they had guys out, they kept trying to do the same stuff, and it did not work. Going into this game against the Bucks, things were visibly different. You could see the fact that Trae Young wasn't on the court. They didn't run the same kind of offense that they ran with Trae Young on the court because he is such an incredible offensive dynamo that he great playmaker, great shot creator, all these different things that Trae Young is. They didn't have that on the court tonight, so they needed to do something different, and they shared the ball. They played really good team-oriented basketball. They didn't play through their star like they typically do with Trae Young, and that worked very, very well for them. The Bucks could not stop them. They couldn't target like one guy. It's not like they were like, okay, Bogdanovich, you beat Trae Young tonight. They would have gotten crushed if they did that. Instead, they let a bunch of different guys get involved. They played to their strengths, slowed things down at times when they needed to in order to kind of keep the pace of what they wanted it to be, and they just beat the Bucks straight up. Like nothing at all. Like people were mad that I was tweeting about the Hawks winning because like, oh, it's just a meaningless regular season game. But it speaks to how much the Hawks have changed over the course of this season. The Hawks at the beginning of the season under Lloyd Pierce would not have won this game. They would have gotten blown out. But under Nate McMillan, a guy who I think deserves Coach of the Year consideration, I'm not sure how much he would ever get because he came in halfway through the season, but the way he has turned this Hawks team around, he deserves at least some thought in that conversation. He's not going to win it. No way in hell he wins the award. But I want him to at least get a couple votes. Like, he doesn't even need to get first place votes. He can get like a second or like a third, maybe like a fourth, fifth place vote. I don't know how far they go back on that. But I want him to get some kind of recognition because he's been so good and he's turned this Hawks team around. A hyper-talented team that is still playing without a lot of their guys. A lot of guys aren't healthy. Like I said, Trae Young was out tonight, but Cam Reddish has missed a ton of time. DeAndre Hunter, two really impactful players that they got in the draft a couple years ago, have hardly played, and both were playing really well before injury. When they ultimately come back, Chris Dunn gets back into the fold. Gallinari gets into the fold. When all these guys get healthy, the Hawks are scary. Another team that I don't want to face if I'm in the first round as one of those contending teams. And the Hawks ultimately, I think, could win their first round series if they get that 4 or 5 seed. If they get a 3 through 8, or not 3 through 8, a 6 through 8, and they have to play one of those 1, 2, 3 teams, I think it's probably the end for them pretty early. I think they'll put up a fight, but ultimately they're going to fall to one of those teams. But if they get that 4 or 5 spot, I don't know. It could be a playoff series win for the Hawks. So that's all I want to say in this video. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know, like I said, the new title of the series called After the Buzzer. Let me know what you think of that. And yeah, let me know what you thought of the games today as well. I'll see you guys later. Ray won't say it back.